Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and one question I always get asked is, how do I fix my typewriter in my apartment? If you also heard Taylor Swift lyrics at that time, I understand. So typewriter repair is something that I have learned to do out of necessity after collecting so many typewriters over the last couple of years. And over the years, my style of typewriter repair has also changed depending on where I live. And I know that I'm not the only one to kind of experience this. When I started typewriter collecting and typewriter repair, a lot of it was done at my parents' home where I had access to real tools, a real air compressor, and a backyard. But over the years, my living situation has changed quite a bit, and people are always asking me how to clean a typewriter in a smaller space when you don't have access to a garage, outside, any of those factors. And I think it's important to talk about that with you guys so that if you are considering having a typewriter or collecting typewriters, but you're intimidated by the repair process because of where you live, there are solutions for you. Now, when I started, I obviously was repairing a lot of my typewriters in my parents' home. I had a dedicated workspace, I had a table that I could set up and leave in the garage, I had a big, beautiful air compressor and a yard. But now I live on the third floor of an apartment building and I don't have access to all of those amenities, and a lot of my considerations when it comes to typewriter repair have changed. In addition to that, I also live in a place where I have now pets everywhere all the time. I have 2 cats living in my home, and there are chemicals involved in typewriter repair processes that I don't want to be anywhere near the cats with. So that's another consideration I have as a repair tech in my own home. I'm also very aware of the fact that I am leasing my apartment and it's not a place I physically own. So I also don't want to do any damage to anything that's here in the apartment and lose my security deposit. So all of these factors are things that I'm thinking about when I tackle a new repair job. So I wanted to try some of these apartment-friendly cleaning hacks with a new typewriter to my collection. This is an Adler J4. I picked this up at my local Goodwill for $10 and it was filthy. So I wanted to see how I could apartment hack clean my very new typewriter in my collection. The first thing that I typically do with typewriters is some sort of air dusting. Now this is super helpful to get out anything that might be in the way of your typewriter operating properly. So dust gets dislodged in places like your type basket, in your carriage as it moves, and typewriters can just generally collect quite a bit of dust from just sitting in a case somewhere or sitting on a shelf. So it is important to remove that, and a gentle way to remove that without getting too chemically is to use an air duster. Now previously I have used a huge air compressor to do this. I have now moved to a more apartment-friendly portable air duster to kind of remove this dust from my machine. And my other tip for doing this process is to do it in the bathtub. Now, if you don't have a bathtub, hopefully you have some place where you can bathe. And if you just have a shower or maybe even just a tiled floor in your bathroom, that is another great option to kind of take your typewriters for repair. That way you don't have to worry about messing up hardwood flooring or getting anything on your carpet or discoloring vinyl in any location. So a bathroom is kind of a great place to clean a typewriter because you've got a lot of surfaces there that can easily accommodate what you might need as you're doing your repair tech stuff.
I've learned my lesson over the years, and the initial dusting that you get out of a really dirty machine like this one, I found that it's easier for me to actually do in the bathtub. So I'll air compress it here in the bathtub because it's easier to just wash everything down instead of getting it all over the apartment and in the cat space. So here I am with the Adler, and we're going to air compress it in the tub.
One of the tips I have for cleaning your typewriter and air dusting your typewriter specifically is to move the typewriter around as you're dusting it. So simply blowing air onto a typewriter is not going to help you very much. It's important to remove things like your ribbon cover so you can get into the actual type basket, to move your carriage around while you're cleaning so you can get in and under the carriage, and also turn your typewriter upside down. Sometimes you get stuff dislodged in the bottom of a typewriter, and being able to get at different parts of your typewriter with compressed air can really clean out all of those spaces.
For anyone still wondering which air compressor I'm still using, I'm using the Vogma V-Monster that I reviewed on my channel a few months ago. This is probably my favorite air duster. The battery life on this does go pretty quickly, but this head does swivel, so you can swivel on either side to then get the light on either side, which I didn't know before. But this is the air compressor I'm using from Amazon. I'll link that down in the description below. One of my most valuable tools that I have in my cleaning kit.
Now, it is important to note anytime I'm doing air dusting, cleaning anything, I do keep myself in a ventilated area. My bathroom does have a window that I can open to get fresh air into that space. If you have an exhaust fan in your bathroom as well, you can also use that to ventilate your air. I also keep the door closed because technically I have 2 cats, but one of them is a cat and the other is a goblin. And so I want to keep her out of the bathtub as I am cleaning the external sections of the typewriter. So I do recommend that if you have roommates or if you have pets, to keep them out of the space so you're not getting them in contact with anything that you're using to clean your typewriters. Now, sometimes typewriters have discoloring on the actual external parts of a machine, and it's not just all internal stuff that you're doing, but cosmetic stuff as well. And this is where I also wanted to try something a little bit newer. I wanted to just use soap and water instead of any chemicals in cleaning my machine. I did use just typical Dawn dish soap and hot water to clean the external casing on this machine. I used it on the outside case and also the casing of this machine in particular. I did remove the side plastic pieces of this Adler J4. I doused them in soap and let them soak in hot water. Now, this is not something you want to try if you have stickers or decals on the machine that you want to protect. Decals can come up, stickers can come up off of the machine if they are exposed to hot water. So be cognizant of the types of materials that you're using. I've also not done this for metal machines. I did this on plastic. So for me, the soap and water method worked really well just for cleaning everything up. Now, I did kind of run into an issue because this is a lighter colored machine. It does pretty easily show nicotine staining. So nicotine and tar staining is what would happen when people would be smoking and using their typewriters. It is pretty common to get that on the keys of a typewriter, especially with machines from this era, and I have a lot of trouble getting tar off of typewriters specifically, so I do every once in a while go in with some sort of solvent to clean if the soap and water isn't working for me. And particularly on this machine, the base bottom part was still showing up a little yellow, so I did go in with my tried and true cleaner, Simple Green. This is the all-purpose clear version, and spray it down and scrub it with a microfiber cloth. That for me is a really gentle way to clean. It is safe. It's not super caustic to clean with. The smell, especially on the scented ones like lavender and lemon, is not as bad as the green version. And for me, this is kind of a safe way to clean up anything else that might show up on your machine. I also highly recommend, if you are scrubbing at a machine, to use something like microfiber towels or microfiber cloths. I never want to do anything that might damage the finish of a typewriter. So for me, microfiber cloths or microfiber towels are a really good way to kind of scrub the machine without getting too aggressive. So I did go in with Simple Green and a microfiber cloth to go in and scrub some of those extra pieces on there. When it comes to tar damage on keys or casing, I do recommend going in thin coats of Simple Green and being patient. I have removed quite a bit of damage from specifically like cream colored keys just by being patient and going in, letting the Simple Green dry, going in again, going in and scrubbing it. So being patient in this process is super helpful, but you can clean them with just some pretty normal household cleaners. As always, patch test your cleaners. So if you want to take a little Q-tip, dip it in the cleaner and put it on an inconspicuous location on your machine just to make sure that you're not going to damage any of the painted finish or the plastic on your machine. Some chemicals and solvents can really cause the paint on a typewriter to dissolve or get cloudy on the plastic surfaces, so it is important to patch test. And then once you've patch tested, go ahead and try to clean up those external surfaces. And that again is pretty easy to do in a place where you could put a bucket to dip the casing in, or in your sink if it's big enough, or in your bathtub, or on a tiled floor.
One thing I learned when I did the bling typewriter was that adhesive like this can come off with Goo Gone. So we're going to try some of that here now. We've got ventilation through the window. We're in the bathtub and the bathtub bottom is protected. We're going to clean this Type Slugs with some mineral spirits and then also just clean out some general gunk.
Now, sometimes your typewriter is just too gunky to work with just a simple air dusting and a simple soap and water clean. That was the case of this Adler J4, probably one of the grossest machines that I have encountered as a typewriter repair tech. It just was full of gunk, and gunk that I didn't even know what it was. So after I did my air dusting, the next thing I wanted to do was actually use mineral spirits on the inside to free up anything that was still stuck in sticky surfaces and remove more of that gunk. Now this is where you start to get into a little bit more of a less apartment-friendly chemical that you're using. I have now switched from typical mineral spirits to odorless mineral spirits. It does still smell. It is not nearly as strong. So I do now use odorless mineral spirits. Odorless mineral spirits. This does seem to work better for my current living situation. It's not nearly as caustic. It is also incredibly important to be in a ventilated area, especially if you're in a bathroom or a place that doesn't have any windows in it. You have to be really careful. If you do have an outside place where you can be, a sidewalk, a parking lot, go there first, because you're going to cause less damage in your home than you will in an area where you might not have ventilation. Don't ever open mineral spirits when you don't have ventilation. You can use gloves as well to protect your skin and the surfaces. I don't have an outside space where I live currently, so I did decide to use mineral spirits in my bathtub. I have over the years learned ways to protect my bathtub using mineral spirits to make sure that I can remove stuff from the typewriter but not paint from the bathtub that I am using. Mineral spirits is a paint thinner, so if you get it on the outside of your typewriter, even if it is plastic, or if you get it on any painted surfaces, it can eat away at that paint surface. So it's incredibly important, if you're going to be using chemicals like this, to make sure you're protecting wherever you are working. I have now developed a system here in my own home where I will put down trash bags on the bottom of my bathtub. I will cover that with paper towels, and then I'll cover that with some sort of newspaper or packing material. Cardboard would also work here. That way you're just kind of leveling the protectant of the surfaces, so you're not going to cause any damage to where you are working. It's also good just in general to make sure you have a surface where you can work on your machine. So in my apartment-friendly version of this video, that is where I've kind of moved a lot of my typewriter repair. I now do most of that cleaning in the bathroom using just mineral spirits and a toothbrush. So I will dip a toothbrush into mineral spirits and scrub away my surfaces. This way I'm also not pouring tons or spraying tons of mineral spirits into the machine that might end up in the air somewhere. So I will go in and specifically target areas with mineral spirits on a toothbrush just to reduce the amount that I am using on a cleaning job. It's also incredibly important to be in a ventilated area. Again, I have the windows open when I'm doing this. If you have an exhaust fan in your bathroom, also have that blowing, and make sure that you are nowhere near any roommates or pets. So my pets are very far away from this process because, again, I don't want to contaminate any of the air in my area. I also will let the window air out the room after I've put the mineral spirits away for about 30 minutes to make sure there's nothing in the air before opening that door again to be available to anybody that might be in my home. So this is an area where I am using a little bit more of a caustic chemical, but I do use it because it's very effective. Mineral spirits is great at getting out gunk, dried down oils, any dirt that you might have in your machine. For me, this is kind of the best cleaner for the internals and metal portions of your machine. There are other materials or other solvents that people use, including lighter fluid, so that is something that you can use on the inside of your machine, but for me, this is what I choose to use.
One of my other favorite tricks is cleaning out these type slugs. I used to go through with a pick and dig out all of the holes, but I found this is actually faster to use a wire brush, and you just scrub along them. It won't mess up your letters itself, but it also kind of gets all of that ink off of the type slugs themselves so they type nice and clean.
I then go in with my air duster to remove all of the extra mineral spirits from the actual machine so it doesn't track anywhere in my house. You can dry off mineral spirits. It will evaporate over time, and for me, using an air duster is a great way to just speed up this process. That is the other reason, though, that I recommend you protect the surfaces around your tub, and you do it in a place where you're not going to be spraying near any cloth surfaces, because the mineral spirits can evaporate, but sometimes it blows off of your typewriter in droplets, and you don't want to get that into any surface where you might cause staining. I have gotten mineral spirits on my bath mat, and now there are white spots on my bath mat where it has removed the color. So that is an important consideration. If you're going in and air dusting after the fact, make sure you've protected all the surfaces in that area and that you're not getting any chemicals on anything that might get damaged along the way. After this process is done, again, I leave that area for a certain amount of time to make sure that it can air out and that the ventilation is properly restored to that space so that nobody gets hurt, nobody gets a headache from smelling chemicals, so all of that is then safe.
The last part of the process is cleaning up afterwards. So you can see I have lots of junk in the tub from all the air compressing I did. So I'm still in a ventilated area. I'm going to OxiClean it down and then just run the shower to clean out the tub. And there's no damage on the actual tub surface because I used those backing sheets in the first place.
Now there are more complicated parts to the typewriter repair process, and I've also been working on getting better at determining how to do those in a space where I've got limited amounts of room. I do have one table that I have dedicated in my home specifically for all of my typewriter needs. It's this table, so I use it for filming insert shots, and then also for typewriter repair. Now this is a nostalgic piece for me. This is from my great-grandmother's home, so I do protect the top of this table with a cardboard box that I flattened out anytime I'm doing typewriter repair, just to protect the top of it. And I do keep this open in my home all the time so that I can go back and forth on working on typewriter jobs. That is kind of a big ask for anyone living in a very small space to have a dedicated area for typewriter repair, but if you do need to do something more mechanical on your machine, it is important to have enough space to kind of spread out and see what you need to do. Anytime you have to get into really tight quarters to work on a machine, it can get pretty frustrating pretty easily. Now, if you don't have the space for a full toolkit, there are just a few tools that I recommend if you're going to get into typewriter repair or even typewriter cleaning. And those are a pretty powerful magnet, some sort of screwdriver set, and a set of pliers. Now, that's not a lot to keep around, and you can use those in other ways in your home as well. It's not like you have to get power tools, but screwdrivers can be super useful, pliers can be really helpful to have in the home, and a magnet is what I recommend to actually keep all of your typewriter pieces as you're removing them from your typewriter in one space. I don't have carpet anymore, but when I lived in a place where I had carpet, the amount of screws that got lost in that carpet was pretty annoying, and I also had animals in that home at that time, so I didn't want them to step on those screws or eat them. So it's important to have somewhere where you can store all those metal pieces from your machine, and for me, a really powerful magnet is how I do that. And if you lose a screw on carpet, you can run that magnet over the carpet to find that screw. So these are the main tools that I use when I'm doing typewriter repair, and for me, these are pretty effective for just about everything that I need. When it comes to screwdrivers, a lot of the older typewriters will use a flathead screw, so those are pretty effective to have. You are going to want something that's a little bit smaller because a lot of the screws in a typewriter can be smaller than your typical screwdriver. So I did find a precision toolkit or a precision screwdriver set that works pretty well for most of the needs that I have, but having a smaller flathead screwdriver can be really helpful. Later models or models made in Japan can use Phillips head screws, or I have seen Allen keys on those as well. So if you have an Allen wrench set or an Allen key, that might be helpful too. If you're looking at something from like the 1970s from Brother, for example, they're going to be using more of those than your typical flathead screw. In addition to those basic tools, I recommend having some sort of solvent that you can use on your machines. I like using Simple Green, but it's a multi-purpose cleaner. I can use it in other places in my home. I also really highly recommend some sort of portable air duster. Now you can get a larger portable air compressor, and you can use that for lots of other things in your home, like the tires on your car, inflatables for the pool, an air mattress. Those are really effective tools. But for me, specifically for typewriter cleaning, a little portable air duster is all I really need to get into there and get all the dust out of those areas. I have reviewed quite a few of those on this channel before. I'll link below my video and the one that I recommend from my Amazon storefront. This is the Vogma V-Monster. This is what I've been using for the last, I want to say, year. It's been really good on most of my machines. So those are kind of how I make typewriter repair user-friendly or apartment-friendly for where I live currently. Typewriter repair is super great if you can do it in a place where you've got lots of open space to lay out tools and parts, and a backyard where you can use solvents or spray paint, but not every collector is going to have all of those amenities for them. So hopefully this guide gives you some ideas for how you can tackle typewriter repair even when you're living in a smaller space and that you have rent to pay. If you're interested in more typewriter content and more cleaning guides, I do have some more on this YouTube channel as well as on my Instagram at just.my.typewriter. And thank you all so much for watching, and remind you, you're just my typewriter.